Dear Frodo. You asked me once if I had told you everything there was to know about my adventures.
Hi, my name's Alec, and welcome to my film essay on all three movies of The Hobbit. For this essay, I will be analyzing who was the true author of the Hobbit trilogy. Now, Peter Jackson had obvious rights to the Hobbit trilogy given his success on the first three Lord of the Rings movies, but it comes to question who is actually the true author of the series. Is it J.R.R. Tolkien, or is it Peter Jackson himself, or is it even the screenwriter? Now, the movies follow the details of the books pretty well, but Peter Jackson actually had a couple things changed to make it into a better movie. Or movies, I should say. Here are a couple of those differences. Frodo, being present in the beginning, whenever Bilbo tells the story, does not happen in the book, only in the movie. The narration of the book actually comes from an ominous voice of whom we do not know who it comes from. Number 2, Azog is supposed to be dead in the book. However, in the movie, they brought him back to life, and he's actually one of the main antagonists of the film. Number 3, Tauriel. Tauriel is actually someone who never appears in the books, but is a main female protagonist in the movies. 4, Legolas was also not in the Hobbit book, but he also plays a very big part in the movies. Number 5, Bilbo and Thorin never really have a real rivalry in the book. Mostly it's just a quip here and there to each other, but it's never really as drawn out and tense as the movies make it. Number 6, Bilbo only stumbles upon the ring. He never really actually plays the riddle game, which comes out to be a huge scene with Gollum in the movie.
Doesn't he, precious? Does he like games? Does he like to play?
Number 7, Radagast only gets mentioned but never plays any significant role. In the movies, he actually distracts the wargs and the orcs while the company runs away, and helps the dwarves on their way to the mountain. Number 8, the dwarves escaped Mirkwood in sealed barrels during the book, but in the movie, the barrels are open, they have a huge battle, the elves chase them, and it's a much more bigger ordeal. Number 9, the dwarves never actually fought Smaug in the book. That only happened in the movie. In the book, Frodo simply snuck in, grabbed the jewel, and snuck out, but did wake Smaug and he did wreak havoc on Dale. Now, the reason why this is important to point out is because Peter Jackson actually had a lot of changes made to how the movie would be shot. And in effect, he created some characters to get audience appeal. He changed a lot of the scenes and even added some on top of that. So Peter Jackson really took the book and started to make it his own from the first stages of writing. Those were just some of the changes made to the book to make it more appealing to the movie screen. Some other things that Peter Jackson changed and created himself were the locations that were built and constructed in CGI for the purpose of the film. Now, these places were minutely described in the book, but when it came to the movies, they really had to draw out the cities, do a lot of CG work, and it's not fair to give J.R.R. Tolkien all the credit for these amazing locations. Now, another big thing praised in the movie were the CG work that was done on the dragon, on Azog, the big battle sequences. That's something that The books talked about the battles and described them a little bit, but Peter Jackson added a few battles, he added a little more cinema to it, and you can really appreciate them for their overall style instead of just a translation of how the book describes them, which is very important because the auteur theory states that in order for someone to claim ownership over the cinema rights to it, they have to redo it and not simply just translate the book to screen. So the reason why I point all these things out is because Peter Jackson injected a lot of his film style into the movies. And the movies are purely successful off the fact that, Peter Jackson was such a great director and took the time to really change the books and rewrite them to make them more enjoyable to a film audience.
He wrote it like a children's bedside story. It was always going to be very difficult to adapt because it's just such a different. It's connected to the Lord of the Rings, but it's such a different sort of a way of telling the story. What ultimately changed things was saying that, rather than adapting just The Hobbit as the 1936 novel, we would be, taking the appendices, the notes that Tolkien wrote, much later on, where he was connecting The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings.
So when we talk about auteur theory and talk about who The Hobbit really belongs to as a trilogy, you would have to give it to Peter Jackson, hands down, just because of the fact of how much time he spent into not only revising the narrative, but creating these amazing locations, these amazing fantasy characters, and this just amazing fictional environment that we can completely immerse ourselves in when we watch the movie. So hands down, the cinematic rights go to Peter Jackson. Thank you for watching. This has been Alec Doherty on Auteur Theory and The Hobbit.